We want to be consultative sellers and partners long term. I'm not interested in our team selling somebody a product or our product that doesn't solve their problem because they're going to churn or they're going to be a problematic customer in support and they're going to cost us hours down the road.
Welcome to the 1% Edge podcast, where we dive into the journeys of extraordinary guests committed to getting 1% better every day. Today's topic: stop rushing to the pitch, the power of selling the problem first. And to help us out with that, I'm honored to have Preston Lambrecht.
Yep.
Oh, man. Head of sales at Kingsta. And welcome to the show, Preston.
Thanks, Carlos. It's good to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
All right. So we had a great little dialogue before we started. I kind of wish we recorded it before, but we talked about a number of different things. Let's start with, what do you mean about, this is the way you kind of put it, what do you mean about selling the problem, not the solution first? What does that mean?
Good question. So I think ultimately what I mean by that is we have to understand exactly what our clients are facing and understand exactly why they're seeking a new solution before we can actually sell a solution, right? If we don't understand the root of the problem, how can we sell to that? How can we help them solve it? And ultimately, I look at selling as a solution. We're helping people solve problems. It's more consultative than it is, trying to get a product out the door kind of a thing. I want to be a benefit to clients coming in. Well, the way for me to do that is to fully understand exactly what they're dealing with. Every industry is a little different, and every customer within that industry is dealing with probably something a little different, maybe something similar. But if we aren't asking enough questions about the problem, how do we know exactly what to solve? One of the things that I often find is that we see a lot of people coming to us with a significant problem, but they may not know exactly what the root of that problem is. Let's say they're having an issue with something that, let's say, in my business, we deal with hosting and traffic. We can have somebody come to us saying we're just not getting the traffic that we're looking for. But the reality isn't necessarily the traffic isn't the problem as much as maybe the infrastructure. They're not getting as good of search engine optimization results, where they aren't ranking high enough on search engines, which is keeping them from being able to get more traffic. But this is due to performance based on the site. So the root of the problem is actually something different than what they're expressing initially. So asking questions and genuinely getting to the root of the problem is going to allow you to not just help them solve their issue at the end of the day and help you get product out the door, but it's also going to create a long-term partnership and relationship because of the trust that is given at that point. You're not just selling a product. Again, you're selling a solution to their root problem. So it's going to solve it long term. It's going to allow them to better generate business long term and continue to grow that way. So that's mostly what I mean when I'm saying solve the problem, not the solution, or work the problem, not the solution.
Agree 1,000%. In fact, that's, I talk about it in my workshops as well. And I think, just to kind of even put a focus on it, look, I get if we were selling ShamWows, a product that's obvious, and we do this fun infomercial, and it's a one-sided conversation. But we're not selling ShamWows. We're selling something that's complex, that can be configured in different ways at different price points. Without understanding the problem, you're kind of putting the cart before the horse. And heck, I'm a big fan of Sarah Blakely. She invented Spanx, and she's got this master class on entrepreneurship. And one of the lines in there that I quote is, she says, sell the problem, not the solution. And she talks about when she first created Spanx, and I think it was Neiman Marcus that was carrying it, she would walk around the stores grabbing folks outside of the department they're in, and she would talk to them, but she wouldn't talk about, like, hey, I got this stretchy stuff that's, I don't know, squeezes you in. She would talk about the fact that, and sorry for anyone that wears Spanx, yes, I have no idea what the product really does. For anybody that really listens, she would talk about the problems. Have you ever experienced this? Have you been in this situation? And she went on to say, people get emotional about solving problems. People don't get emotional about solutions. And
No.
that creates the energy to want to have more curiosity about the product and learn more, and ultimately, hopefully, get you over the hump if you see enough value in it to get you to buy it. So, I don't know. It's a long way to say agree 1,000%. Preston, what might be some common mistakes that reps and even companies make in selling? Not really, where they don't spend the time to really uncover the underlying problems.
I think the most common most common mistake that I see among salespeople is a rush to try and close the deal, right? So I think more so today than ever before. I mean, we're seeing a lot of layoffs in the technology space and things like that. The economy's struggling a little bit, right? So everybody is really, really stretching to find a sale, I think. And in doing so, we often, I think, skip the most important part, which is the discovery portion of a call with a client. Are we asking enough questions? And when you think you have asked enough questions, ask five more. That's kind of my philosophy. When you rush to try and sell the product, you're likely missing out on understanding, like I said, that what that problem is. So what I see is if somebody comes in, a client starts having a conversation, and in the initial portion of the discovery call, you ask a question. Let's just say, for example, tell me why you're looking for this new product or a new solution to solve your existing product problem. They then talk a little bit about what they're dealing with and why and what the problem is and how they would like to see somebody solve it. And internally, they're saying, okay, yes. On the sales side, they're saying, yes, we can solve that problem. And they immediately jump into solving that problem that the customer described. But again, if you aren't asking the right questions, you're going to end up trying to solve a problem that maybe isn't really, again, the root problem. What you end up doing is you're making assumptions about the client's situation. You're making assumptions about what they need without asking enough questions, and then you're solving a problem that you assume is what they need solved, right? Then what ends up happening is you lose that deal to a competitor who actually asked enough questions to figure out exactly what the root problem was, right? And then at the end of the day, what you find is the person that didn't ask enough questions is sitting there going, I don't understand how I lost this deal. Like, we were a good fit, our product solved the problem. What happened? And then you're trying to go and get an answer from the client as to why they chose a competitor over you. And ultimately, they come back with an answer that doesn't make any sense to you because you're like, well, you never talked about that. Well, we never asked that question either, right? We never
Right.
asked enough questions. So a lot of the times, again, to me, the majority of deals that I see lost are due to the fact that we didn't do enough discovery at the beginning. We rushed to win a deal. We rushed to close something because we're thinking about our quota rather than thinking about solving somebody's problem and being helpful, right, in that situation. So I think just rushing through the process, not taking enough time to really understand exactly what our customers are dealing with, the root problem, how it's affecting their business, and exactly what that return on our investment can be if they were to go with our solution.
Agreed. Agreed. In fact, especially in tech, we don't do them any favors. And what I mean by it is when new technology sometimes comes out, we fill the rep's mind about how great and wonderful this new mousetrap is. They go to market, they get some early adopters, they see some success, and they go, "This is the recipe. Just show them the product."
Yep.
And it's almost not even a rush to close; it's a rush to demo. Like, once they see the product, I mean, their socks will be blown. It'll be the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they're going to want to move forward. And I also think it's a trap that buyers fall into. And here's what I mean by it. So, some research I saw a few years ago was that 73% of sellers lead with product. Let me tell
Yep.
you what we do. Let me tell you what we're great. Let me tell you about us and how we're different, right? And that's the polar opposite of listening, understanding, and seeing what problems the customer has that we might be able to help them with, right?
Hmm.
The other side of it is, a lot of buyers, they're not professional buyers, so they're busy. So instead of, hey, like I don't have a lot of time. Let me tell you what I want. Let me tell you what I'm looking for. Solution, solution, solution. And the trap is the rep goes, we do
Yeah.
that. Let me show
Yep.
you. Warm up the demo.
Yeah.
And later on, it bites you on the hiney. In fact, other research I saw is like one of the key factors or complaints from buyers is sellers don't listen. And to your point, initially they'll go, well, I asked. Did you really?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. I think you bring up a really interesting point, which is this idea that the buyers come in saying, this is the solution that I need, right? And as a seller, it's hard not to go, yeah, I'm gonna eat this up all day. Yeah, tell me exactly what you need, and then I'll just give you what you asked for. And it sounds like an easy win, but again, what ends up happening is what I see a lot is people come to Kinsta saying this is what we need, um, but that's not actually solving their problem. It's again, um, people come to get a product oftentimes because they're not experts in that product, right?
Mhm.
They have a company that uses that product on a regular basis, but that doesn't make them an expert in that industry or of that product.
Right.
But it gives them a perception they know a fair amount, and I'm not discrediting that you do know amount or a fair amount about that product, but you're not necessarily the expert, right? The salesperson on the opposite side of that call has the responsibility of genuinely seeking out the real problem and helping. Even if you come in as a client and you say, "This is what I need," as a salesperson, it's my job to do the due diligence to make sure that's actually what you need. Right. I still have to ask those questions. I still have to figure out how you're coming to this conclusion because we might be missing pivotal information that allows us to maybe offer a different product or a slightly different product or a pivot of some sort that's actually going to be a better solution than what you're just asking for. And part of that, I think, is we have so much information available to us as consumers today online that we can go in and do a lot of our own research. AI is making that even more possible. Gemini, Chat GPT, all these different services where people can go on there and do deep research on different types of companies. And we've seen this where we've had leads genuinely coming to us because Chat GPT is recommending Kinsta's product.
Mhm.
Which is great. We have somebody out there selling for us, which is fantastic. But at the same time, at the end of the day, again, we're supposed to be the experts on this. So we need to make sure that our client fully understands what our product does, what it can do for them, and that we fully understand exactly how they're utilizing maybe their existing product, what they're wanting to do differently, what does the future of their business look like what are you trying to accomplish, etc., in order to make sure that we are pairing together the right tools for them to solve their problem, to alleviate that stress, help them better generate more business or do more with less people, right? Ultimately, we want to give them a return on their investment. Um, and in doing so, we become real partners. I think that that's often overlooked in sales. I talk to my people all the time. We want to be consultative sellers and partners long term. I'm not interested in our team selling somebody a product or our product that doesn't solve their problem because they're going to churn or they're going to be a problematic customer in support and they're going to cost us hours down the road and eventually they're going to be upset. And we know more now than ever today that consumer reviews are exceptionally important. Reddit's huge. I don't know how many times customers come in saying, "Hey, I heard this on Reddit, or I saw this post on Reddit or on Twitter or whatever from previous
Mhm.
customers or existing customers," right? So making sure you get that right on the sales side, because this is the primary first interaction usually with a business. If you are seeking out the root of the problem, you're solving that problem in a consultative approach. You're not just selling something, you're consultative in that helping them partner long term, you generate a successful relationship with them that helps grow both businesses, right? As they grow, Kinsta grows, or vice versa, whatever company you're in. You're going to see long term partnership growth. And I think that's something that a lot of businesses are lacking today. I think most people are really seeking to get from a million ARR to 100 ARR, a million ARR, and then sell the business. How they get there, whether or not it's sustainable long term, is maybe a little less relevant today than maybe what it was 25, 30 years ago, even.
Agreed. All right. So, what would you say to the rep or leader that would push back on you and say, yeah, look, I agree with you, but you asked about asking more questions. Hey, if we do this discovery, it's going to take more time. It's going to extend our sales cycles. What would you say to them?
What's 15 minutes? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, realistically, okay, let's again, I think it's still long term. You're talking about asking an extra 15 minutes worth of questions, okay? That you're probably not going to get to ask later on, right? A lot of people, what I see is they'll come into a conversation, have a meeting with somebody, and then communicate the rest of it through email. It's pretty difficult to ask 5 more questions via an email, right? I think anybody that's in sales knows that if you send an email with 5 questions into it to a client, you're likely not going to get a response because it's too much. Like, it
Right.
sounds crazy to me that we're at that point, but yeah, the idea of answering 5 questions in an email is a lot of work. I'd rather ask those questions as a salesperson in a face-to-face conversation like this over a meeting or on a phone call than trying to do that in an email. Ultimately, the other thing is, again, what is 15 minutes in terms of uh, making sure we create long-term success? Right. If we look at things individually as a rep, then I'm only interested in hitting my quota and not interested in making sure that the business is successful long term. My job might not be around very long as a salesperson. Right. Um, Same with that. If I'm a salesperson and I'm selling stuff regularly and I'm hitting my monthly quota, but all those accounts are churning in 6 months, am I being successful? Am I really a successful salesperson, or am I just simply manipulating a conversation in order to hit a quota and then not caring afterwards? Uh, that to me isn't a great salesperson. That to me is just a very selfish concept in winning deals, and I just don't think it has a great place. I think eventually you can be successful in that for a short period of time, but eventually you're going to fall flat. You're going to find that somebody's going to find you out, whether that's your manager or a customer at some point is going to send an email to your manager about the falsehoods you were praising at the beginning of the conversation and what they purchased, and now it's not happening. And
Right.
again, long term, that gets out and that becomes a problem for the company. And again, if it becomes a problem for the company, that all trickles down at some point, right? If the business isn't growing because we've got bad reviews out there, specifically around the sales process, then people aren't going to want to talk to the sales team because they don't have trust in the sales team anymore, which means you're going to lose business and now you're going to stagnate. Maybe you plateau. And it takes a lot to recover from bad reviews, right? My fiance and I have an Airbnb in Westminster, Colorado, and uh, prime example of this is you get a certain status if you can stay above like a 4.85 or 4.9 stars in consumer reviews. You get special status like guest favorite or something like that. Now, you can have 100 5-star reviews, but if you get one 3-star review, it dramatically brings your rating down, right? And I think and they're so much more impactful. Negative reviews are far more impactful on a business than any positive reviews, right?
Right.
People go out and you read something. Um, I don't know if you're like me, but if I'm looking at a product, if I'm reviewing something, the first thing I do is I'm like, okay, this looks good. It seems to fit my needs. I'm going to go look at the reviews, say on Amazon, and I'm going to specifically look at all of the 1-star reviews and see if there's a common trend within that. Right now, if I were to do the same thing with a company who has a sales team, and I see that people are complaining about the sales experience, how they were sold something and then they got something different when they got in there, I'm not going to have a lot of trust or confidence that me having a conversation with their sales team is going to result in me actually getting a solution to my problem, as much as I'm just going to get what I want to hear in order to purchase, and then I'm left on my own, right? So I think you have to be you can't just be selfish in a sales role. right? Even though you have your own individual quota, you still have to think about the long-term effects of how that uh, affects the company, your peers, for example, around you, right? Like again, if you're the one that's getting all the negative reviews, your peers are also getting, are also being seen in the same light. It's not just
I
you; it's a team, and then it's a company and a brand, and it goes out beyond that.
agree with you. It's funny because thinking back to the originally about spending the time, and you said, "Hey, it's what are 15 minutes." I try to remind folks two things. Like one, the reason you might be having a long sales cycle is because you're not asking enough questions early on, and it's biting you in the hiney later. And the other thing to think about is sometimes you got to slow down to speed up. The it's you mentioned it earlier. There's more information out there than ever. They don't need reps to give them information. They can get a lot of it on their own these days. By the same token, we need to be prepared. We need to be getting information and asking better questions based on information. So, I'm looking for your tips on asking better questions. One of mine is, hey, do your homework, right? What are people in this industry really struggling with these days? What's happening in their world? How's it different based on the persona title that I'm talking to? The questions I'm going to ask their VP of sales is going to be different than the questions I'm asking their system administrator, right? So,
100%.
any tips on asking better questions that show that we're an expert in our field and also lead us to get the information that we really need?
Well, I think you nailed it with doing some research. I think understanding the personas, right? You have multiple personas, especially in ours. We have like agencies, marketing agencies, design agencies, et cetera, that build websites. We have enterprise companies that have just one website, but it gets millions of views. It's an entirely different team that you're talking to rather than a marketing agency. So, single site versus somebody who's managing multiple sites. Those are different personas. But then you have different personas within those businesses themselves, right? You have maybe the head of marketing that's in charge of the website itself, but they aren't the ones that are developing the site. They aren't doing the work on the back end kind of a thing. So they're not using necessarily our product right away, but they may be the ultimate decision maker, right? So who are you talking to, and understanding what their role is pretty important to be able to ask the right questions, right? So I think having an understanding of exactly who's using your product, for one, you need to ask that question right out of the gate. Who's going to be responsible for using the product? I think better understanding exactly what metrics they're using to also determine the what product they're going to use is also pretty important. And then you can start to branch out from there. Um, Again, I think you have a unique aspect as a seller because you have the opportunity to talk to a lot of different people that have a lot of different problems and situations that they're dealing with. Pulling in those past experiences, right? Problems that have like one of my favorite things is just asking, tell me more about that, right? Like that's kind of like one of the most
Mhm.
common sales questions that people say. Just ask that because you want to hear more. Tell me more about that. I need to understand a little bit more. And if you're listening, if you're truly listening, you're going to catch a lot of nuggets in there. Um, you can find those nuggets and use them for generating questions to other clients in a similar position. Maybe they're the same persona, they both work with agencies, maybe they're both the developer in that agency. Now you go, I can use this as leverage as a future question for other clients. And I don't think we often do that. Sometimes we just think of everything individually situational instead of just saying, hey, what's the broad underlying example here of this persona or this type of individual's position and what they typically are doing. A lot of people ask a lot of leading questions, right? Um, I've heard a lot of agencies that I've spoken with are dealing with this. Are you guys encountering the same problem? Right? Those are good questions. And one of my favorite questions is tell me how that affects your business. Right? What does this mean? Or what does it mean if you don't solve this problem in the next 6 months? And I think a lot of people don't ask those questions. They aren't,
Agreed.
right? They're taking again, I think they're just taking kind of the client's solution that they want coming in, right? Like we talked about earlier, I need X, and you go, I can give you X. even though they need X and Y, or they really need Y. But we're going to give them X anyways and hope that they just figure out that Y is available to them. I think, again, I think if you just take that time, it makes a big difference in your ability to seek out the root of the problem. I
Right.
think that's ultimately what you're getting back to every time. How are you asking questions? Have you, again, ask yourself when you're in discovery, do I know everything about their problem? Can I articulate it effectively back to them? And if you can't, if you feel like you still have a question, ask it. Ask the question, right? I think sometimes another thing that I see is people sometimes be afraid to ask questions as salespeople. You're worried you might offend somebody on the other side of it. My answer to that is they're here seeking a solution, right? If somebody's offended about a question that they get asked about what problems they're currently having, they might not be ready to actually solve the problem, right? It could be a buyer signal as well. So you can take a lot away from those types of interactions. So I think, again, you need to seek out who is your individual that you're talking to? What's the persona that they're working with? What history have you dealt with in this type of person, this persona already? And what kind of questions can you already presume to ask before you ever get into that meeting, right? And then if you ask those questions, you're going to find that you will have other questions come to you in that conversation. It's going to happen. Just seek them out. If you go into that discovery call going, I need to ask questions, you'll find questions to ask.
Yeah, I summarize it as be curious. You know,
100%.
if your intention going in there is I'm going to sell them a hammer or whatever you're selling, you know what? You're going to come up a little bit disingenuous, not very empathetic. But if you go in there going, hey, I'm going to learn something today. I'm going to be curious about them, their business, their situation, the implications of these problems, why they're addressing it now versus, last year, what changed? That
Yeah,
curiosity will help drive a lot of your questions. And then there's something else I wanted to double down on what you said is you also got to listen to the answers. And I know that sounds like a duh, but so many of us ask questions and then we start thinking about our next question versus
yeah,
truly understanding what you're hearing, right? And then you can send it back, even just confirming back. So let me make sure I got this right. So this is what's happening today, and it's having these types of implications. Did I get it right? So that
100%.
we don't make. And what's funny is when people do that, yeah, 50% of the time you get, yeah, you nailed it. But some of the time you get the, yeah, but you're missing this other big problem we haven't even talked about yet. And I remind folks is they're used to dealing with lousy salespeople. So if you feel like they're being heard and you really care about them, they might actually open up with you and share a lot more with you. But if they don't feel that way, they feel like you're just pitching them a product, they're just going to lean back and go, oh, it's another one of those. Let's see what he's got. And
Yep.
it's not really building that long-term relationship that you talked about at the beginning. Now, Preston, I
Yeah.
could talk to you all week, but I gotta keep these to around 30 minutes. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. How'd you get to this position? Give me a little bit more on your background.
Yeah, I have an interesting background. I've had a job in just about every field you could think of growing up. I started when I was 14 at a movie theater, but it comes from, I think, my parents instilled a good work ethic in me when I was a kid. I grew up, my parents owned a recycling center in a very small town in western Kansas. And it gave me the opportunity to just do a bunch of different things when I was little. Um, Things that today probably sound absolutely crazy. I learned how to weld when I was like 8 or 10, use a torch when I was that young, helped build a go-kart when I was 12 years old. And so did a lot of different things because of that. And it got me interested in just a variety of different things. Long story short, I ended up graduating high school and I went into ministry. I actually have a degree from Manhattan Christian College, a Bible college. I wanted to do youth ministry. I loved the idea of helping students navigate the murky waters of junior high and high school, and how do they figure out what's next for their life. I thought that was always kind of an interesting and difficult question, and I think students have a really difficult time with that. So that really intrigued me. So I got into ministry. I was in that for about 9 years total. And then exited ministry and went into technology. I've always been a tech person. I love technology. When I was little, I had remote control cars, and I loved to take them apart to try and see how they worked. Just I wanted to figure that out. Um, so technology was always really interesting to me. After getting out of ministry, I got an opportunity to work for Apple on their support team, which was really, really cool and unique experience. It was a fully remote experience, the first time that they had done that at the company at Apple, and um, it gave me the opportunity to learn some really cool things that I think I would say honestly contributed a lot of success to my sales career. Ironically enough, I think that in support you're taught to work the problem, right? And I think that's maybe where this whole you know, work the problem, not the solution, kind of comes from. You have a lot of empathy. The first thing that Apple tells you is to generate an empathy statement, right? So when somebody comes in and they're upset about something, give them an empathy statement, help them understand that you know where they're coming from and that you want to help. That's a trick that I've carried over to my sales career as well. People often come in, again, if they're seeking out a new problem, if they're coming to you, so an inbound opportunity, they've already got a problem. Be empathetic to it. Help them understand that you know where they're coming from. This usually isn't the first time that you're hearing about it as well as a salesperson. It's probably the second or third or 100th. So you can be empathetic to those situations. You know what they're dealing with. And so that was really fun going through the Apple side of things. I think I had 7 different roles there in a year and a half that I was there, 5 different managers. It was a very unique kind of way to work in a company, very different from anything else I've been a part of. And then I got into the startup world. I worked for a startup in Omaha, Nebraska. I was employee number 10 there. It was called Flywheel. They're now owned by WP Engine. They got acquired after about 4.5 years of me working there. And that was a really cool experience as well, going from 10 employees to 250 employees over a 4-year period was an exciting experience. You get to learn a lot. And so I got to take all that in. That's where I went from started in support, became a senior support engineer, and then moved over to the sales side of things. And to be quite honest, I didn't want to move to sales at first. It's really funny. Uh, the VP of sales and marketing at the time, and one of the sales managers took me out for a walk one day and said, "Hey, you know, we think you could be a really great salesperson. We'd like for you to possibly move over to the sales team." And I told them no right away. And they were like, "Whoa, hey, well, why? Like, hang on a second, why?" And so I just have bad experience with salespeople. You know, I had the typical or stereotypical used car salesman uh, view in my head. That's what I was expecting. Not all salespeople. They're here to sell you something. They're not here to provide you a real solution or consultation or anything like that. I just need to sell you something so I get paid, right? We're all commission based. So here, buy my stuff. Um, and they talked about, hey, you know, we're building an entirely different type of sales team. We don't want to do that at all. We want to be very consultative. We want to make sure we're solving the problem. And if we can't solve the problem, we need to tell them that we're probably
Right.
not a good fit for you, right? And I loved that approach. And so that kind of swayed me. I moved into the sales side of things, and it's been an exciting ride ever since. That was 2016, so almost a decade now in sales, and I've had a lot of different opportunities to do many different things. Hence has been a really cool, I would say, experience as well. I came in as a account executive, and now I'm leading the sales team here in the Ameris region. Excuse me.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been really, really exciting. We've grown leaps and bounds since over the last 4.5 years of my time here. And I couldn't imagine my career anywhere else at this point, to be completely honest. It's been a really fun ride.
Congrats. That's great. All right. So to close this thing out, what's your 1% edge?
My 1% edge, I think, is genuinely empathy. I would argue that that is the 1% edge that I bring to every conversation. And as a sales manager, I think you have to have that for your own people, right? I think you need to be empathetic. If you can understand, put yourself in the client's shoes and really genuinely understand what they're dealing with, it allows you to help solve that problem, right? You can feel the pain, you can understand exactly what their frustrations are, then you can really help them solve that problem. And it gives you a desire to want to help, right? It doesn't give you a desire to sell, it makes you want to help. And I think that's where great salespeople differentiate themselves. They want to help people achieve something greater, um, overcome that problem. Uh, to me, that was one of my favorite things, was going back and you look at past clients that you've had good interactions with, that you sold a product, and you see how they've grown over their time in using your product. That's so rewarding. Like that to me, I think
Yeah.
is just a prime example of like, again, I'm here, I'm seeking to help you solve a problem. It happens to help us both. And I'm doing it through a sales role. That's cool. That's what
Excellent.
I enjoy.
And Preston, if people wanted to get to know you better and reach out to you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Oh man, honestly, probably LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me anytime if you guys are interested. Comment on, I'm sure you're going to release this to LinkedIn or something. So feel free to comment on there or reach out to me via DM. You can also reach me at prestonlambrecht@kinsta.com if you're interested in chatting. Those are the two best ways to contact me.
You got it. Well, thank you very much for being on the podcast today.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Carlos. Appreciate your time.
You got it. All right, everyone. That does it for this week's episode. I hope you found some value in our conversation. I couldn't agree more with Preston's perspective. And if you did find value in it, please comment back, subscribe. We would greatly appreciate it. Take a listen to us on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, I wish you nothing but the greatest success. Take care.